Did you press record on this one? I already did.
Should I turn off the lights?
Okay, so make sure they're running. Okay. You know? Really just don't take anything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's already in there?
Yeah, she's taper.
Okay.
Did you have a pen?
Yes. Just a couple of
instructions.
As long as you don't do any business. Okay.
Okay.
And I have two cameras, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
This one
For hearing.
is a little wider like this, but it's
Like speak loud and clear.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
everyone speak loud and clear and make eye contact so we can really see. Easier for him to hear you if you, and understand if you're making eye contact directly. Okay. So have your question in mind and then ask it, but don't ask as you're reading it.
Ella, if you also want to write an idea of a question or something that you think, you can do a job.
Okay.
Oh, did you start?
No, I didn't start.
Okay.
Wait, should I use my last name?
No, wait. Yes.
Okay.
Your first name. Okay, not yet. Okay, but loud and clear. Go on.
Good afternoon. My name is Leanne Jacobi. Thank you for coming to our interview for Names Not Numbers project. I will begin with questions about before the war.
A little slower.
It's already not good. Sorry. Too low.
Too low.
Fast.
Okay.
And try to look at him when you're speaking to him. Hello, my name is Leanne Jacobi. I'm going to be blah, blah, blah. Okay?
Okay.
Speak
I can't assimilate everything
Too fast?
There's
Okay.
a lot of background noise here. There's girls, there's stamping. It's very sensitive to a person who's wearing a hearing aid. So you need to be more sensitive to him, how he hears, okay? We hear because we know how to hear with all the noise going on.
Okay, no
All right.
problem.
It's almost like a scream, like you're angry at your brother, so you speak very loudly.
To you
and
it
slowly.
sounds loud, but to him.
Okay, can you stop me if I'm not like,
Okay,
okay.
perfect.
Okay.
got it.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Leanne Jacobi. Thank you so much for coming to our interview for Names Not Numbers project. I will begin with asking you questions about before the war. Please tell me your name.
Oscar Heller.
Where? Oh.
H-E-L-L-E-R. First name is Oscar. O-S-C-A-R.
Where were you born?
Hungary.
When were you born? When were you born?
1930. November 26, 1930.
How many siblings did you have? How many siblings do you have?
I had a younger sister, two older sisters, and an older brother.
What did your parents do for a living? What did your parents do for a living?
My father was a wine producer. As a matter of fact, when the Russians captured the city, my father had still wine that he kept putting in big barrels. They couldn't move them. And one Russian, they couldn't get to the barrels because the opening was on top. So they shut the sides of the whole cellar was full of wine. One Russian soldier drowned in the wine. He got chicken and he drowned in the wine. So that's what my father was producing. He bought up the grapes from all the growers. And the Prime Minister of Hungary also sold these grapes to my father, and he produced the wine.
Where did you live in Hungary?
A city named Nyíregyháza. There are 60,000 people living there, 6,000 Jews. There was a conservative congregation and a Orthodox congregation.
What was a Shabbos like in your house?
It was as usual, even in Shabbos in America. Friday evening was Friday evening. Went to shul, came home, had a nice dinner, and then on Shabbos morning my father gave a shiur, so he went a little earlier, and Shabbos went through normally. He ate lunch at Suda Sirishis and in the shul, and nothing special, except he learned a little bit. My father learned with me, and some time during the day, Shabbos. And next day was Sunday.
We read that the Prime Minister would sometimes eat dinner at your house. What was that like?
No, the Prime Minister, my father rented his house a couple of times, but he had Jews renting his estate. his name was Miklos Carlyle. He became Prime Minister in 1943. The war already turned, so the officials won as anti-Semitic as before. The anti-Semitic Prime Minister resigned, Bardos Laszlo. He was hung after the war. He was sentenced to death. So that was the action, cross action. My father and the Prime Minister.
What was an average day in your childhood? Did you go to school?
I was already in Cheder. I got up at 5 o'clock, 5:30. My father woke me up. I went to Cheder. The learning early in the morning, like 5, 6 o'clock, was very fruitful because the head was clear. And people insisted that the Cheder should be open at 5:30 or 6 o'clock. My father went to school anyway because he was here in the morning. And I went along, came home to eat breakfast at 9 o'clock, at 8 o'clock, went back to school, elementary school, at 8 o'clock until 1 o'clock, then went back to Cheder at 2 o'clock, till 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. And did the homework. My father went to business, he came home at lunch every day. In Europe, you usually came home for lunch in small cities. At lunch, we came home from the elementary school, ate lunch and went back to Cheder. The whole family was together for lunch. And that was the day, and we came home. My father learned a little bit with me for another half an hour, and went to sleep. 9 o'clock, the house was dark.
What was your relationship like with the non-Jewish children? The non-Jewish children?
We went to elementary school, all Jewish, was under Jewish auspices. It was like a yeshiva here, but it was separate elementary school. It wasn't one school, a yeshiva and elementary. There was no yeshiva. My age, or our age, was Cheder. Yeshiva started when they were 14, 15. They were mitzvah already. And the elementary school was all Jewish. It was a big city, so it could afford. It was under the auspices of the conservative congregation. It wasn't Orthodox.
Did you have any relations with the non-Jewish children outside of school?
Yeah, they used to throw stones at us on the street. That was the relation. They were anti-Semitic. The schools were anti-Semitic. Products of the war already. The war was polarized. Nazis and the Germans and the Allies, so there was a lot of enmity.
Besides for the kids throwing stones, what was it like living in Hungary before the war?
But saying what I said before, we had a lot of friends, non-Jewish friends. They were really going out of their way to help my father and my mother. My father in business had a good name, and he had all our officials knowing him personally. And the relationship was normal, except the youth was anti-Semitic. Mm-hmm. But the mature people, normal people. And we had a very conservative rabbi was Dr. Berl Bernstein. He had 2 doctorates, one doctorate from the University of Würzburg in East Germany, and one PhD from the Rabbinical Seminary in Budapest. And he had white belt already and a hard collar, spread lower bed, and as a conservative rabbi, before he ate the chicken, he had to examine the knife. The shochet took him to his house and showed him the knife. It's okay. So this was already a conservative rabbi, not an Orthodox. Mm-hmm. The Orthodox rabbi was a Hasidic rabbi of Shulam.
Can you describe what Pesach was like before the war?
Before the war was, the war started in 1939. I was 8 years old, so I didn't do much. I happened to read the paper every day. The neutral paper, the objective newspaper was Nipsova, People's World. And they were neutral, they were not anti-Semitic. The life in Hungary for the Jews was comfortable. It was a prosperous congregation of Jews in whole Hungary, and especially in the big cities like Nyíregyháza, Debrecen, all the big cities. The Jews were very well off economically. They had businesses and they were very smart, and they were very, I forget names, they were very, if you are
Educated.
very,
Successful.
they do the job honestly. They were
Honest. They were honest.
they had honest work, and they did work.
Hard work.
They were hard work, and they're successful.
At first, what did you think that Nazi Germany, like what was the impact that it would have on Hungary?
The Hungarian Jews had a mistaken attitude that nothing will happen to the Hungarian Jews, because the Hungarian Jews are better educated than the Polish Jews, not the German Jews. German Jews are very educated. But Germany, the trouble started in 1933, when Hitler came to power. But we had a very nice life. We had no problems. The living was there. Everybody made a living. There were a couple of poor people, but the community supported them. There was nobody starved. Everybody supported them, and especially then when the Polish Jews came up to us from Poland. They escaped the Germans. They were taken care of, everything they needed. So it was a normal life. We played. There were 50 cousins. My father had 4 brothers and a sister. Each one had 6, 7, 8 children. So we were a big family. And nothing exceptional happened. Made a living, made weddings in the family. But of course, children didn't attend weddings in those days. It was only for grown-ups. So we never experienced a wedding in our family because it was for the higher level people. And everything was okay even after the war started in 1939. But the war started for Hungary in 1941. Until 1941, Hungary was neutral. And but in 1941, they couldn't withstand the German pressure, so they joined the war. They declared war on the United States. I remember the headlines in the newspaper: "We declare war on the United States." For celebrations, they were going to defeat the United States. They couldn't even spell the word the United States, but they wanted to defeat the United States. So this went on until 1944. Nothing happened. There was a little persecution of Jews. They had special battalions of Jews. They didn't mix the soldiers with Jewish soldiers and non-Jewish soldiers. And minor difficulties. But basically, the life was easy and pleasant. Then came March 17, 1944. What happened was the Hungarian government was negotiating an unconditional surrender of Hungary to the Allies. And the German spies, that was going on in Turkey. The talks were made in Turkey. The German intelligence got to know of it. And they found out that Hungary wants to make a separate peace. So Horthy, the regent of Hungary, was invited to Berlin. And Hitler told them in Berlin that either you let us occupy your country, or we'll make war and we will destroy you. So Horthy had no choice. I mean, Hungary couldn't measure up to German army and German economy. So Horthy resigned. They resigned to his fate, gave him permission to German army to enter Hungary. It was March 17, 1944. March 17, 1944. Sunday I was in Cheder. I came home from Cheder, 7 o'clock, but Sunday was a little later because there was no Hungarian, no English or other civil discussion. So, see, everybody was quiet. My father was quiet. They were talking quietly with my brother. I had a 20 years old brother, beautiful, tall guy, just finished yeshiva and he was getting into business. But everybody was terribly upset. I was a child. I didn't know what the problem is. Then I heard that they're discussing the fact that German troops entered Hungary. And nothing was on the radio. The radio didn't mention anything about German troops. But Monday, again, additional German troops entered Hungary. And Tuesday, finally, the radio announced that the Hungarian government gave Germany permission to occupy Hungary. And that was the end of the Jewish community of Hungary. And a week later, it was only a week, Eichmann was there already. Eichmann was hung in Israel, was there already getting organized the thing. By next week, we were all supposed to wear yellow stars. And Pesach was soon, so Pesach was still, they didn't bother anybody. A day after Pesach, they started collecting all the Jews. It was in about 3 weeks, and they were already to take upon the Jews. There was Pesach 44. And after Pesach, they started to bring in the Jews from the small towns, the small villages where they lived. They didn't want to make a concentration camp every village, so they concentrated everything in Nyíregyháza. Nyíregyháza was a big city, so all the surroundings came in to Nyíregyháza, and they were put up on the street of looms until, this was in May, until June they started deporting the Jews from Nyíregyháza. They had no idea where they're going. They told us they're going to work. They're going to Germany to work. And we didn't know what to believe. But my father wanted to be secure. He took my 2 big sisters, got them false papers as Aryans, and sent them up to Budapest, false identity. And then my father had papers on me, my little sister, and my mother. And he begged my mother and my sister, go to Budapest. I have the papers for you. My mother said, I'm not going without you. My father said, I can't go with you because I cannot live like a goy. Even if they kill me, I can't live like a goy. So my mother begged him to let's go out. They were arguing until the Germans came and they put us in trains and we went to Auschwitz. But we didn't know exactly where we were going. We were hoping. They told us we were going to work. And they had false cards, mail, cards by mail. Hello, family, how are you? Everything's okay with you. But it was awful. And this was the sausage.
We're going to switch here. So where did you go?
So this was the initial history of the Jews.
Right. So it's now.
Which number?
You want to ask? Yeah. Okay, you ask the question?
So who's next?
So this one.
Here, I'll let you direct them.
Yeah, I got it.
Let me have my, so you're on mic already?
No, yeah. So you want to leave the questions?
I have questions.
No, the few that she wants to get to.
Oh yeah, I wanted to get to that.
That one, and then this one.
You have the mic?
Okay.
Michaela, you have the mic?
I'm gonna put it.
Yeah, meaning, why go to Budapest? Was it better there? Why do they think it's better in Budapest?
Okay.
3 years ago, you could have heard me better because my speech was better.
We can hear you
But I had
fine.
some mini strokes
We can hear
in
you
my
fine.
speeches.
You sound great. We can hear every word.
Happy late birthday.
Okay.
It was just your birthday.
Are I sure?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Should I bring Budapest
I
up
told
first?
them I'm 90. I want them to
Yeah, I think so, because he mentioned it.
Okay.
You know,
Should I
just-
introduce myself?
Yeah, to introduce yourself, and then you're gonna go from where, and you're gonna go till.
I have during the war until 30. So I'm gonna do from the bar mitzvah, and then I'm gonna finish here, and then
Yeah, I would get until
here.
27.
Okay.
Because once you do that, it's gonna
Okay.
save all
So,
conversation.
okay. Can I get the pen for a second? Thank you. Thank you. Oh no, it's fine. Thank you.
Introduce yourself and really loud. Very loud.
I'm very loud, okay. Hi,
Hi.
my name is Eden.
How do you do?
I'm great. How are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Okay, so I'm going to continue asking you questions. So you brought up Budapest. Why were things different in Budapest? How was life in Budapest?
I wasn't brought up in Budapest. I was brought up in Nyíregyháza, which was a provincial city in the provinces near the Russian border. It was a big city, 60,000 people. Those days it was a big city, 60,000, 6,000 Jews. But if you wanted special medical treatment, you went to Budapest. Budapest had a good hospital, and one of the best hospitals in Budapest was a Jewish hospital. That's what was called Hungarian, Zsidó-kórház.
So you said, was life better in Budapest? You said your sisters were being sent there. Was life better there?
You could hide better in a big city because they had false papers. The regular papers were Jewish religion, but they couldn't go with that. Because every corner, street corner, they ask you for the identification. So they had to get false papers, false identity, false passports, and they went to Budapest and lived incognito. Nobody knew who they were.
How old were your sisters?
My older sister was 18, my younger sister was 16.
And your brother?
My brother was 20.
Okay.
My little sister was 11.
Okay. When the war started, you were 12 years old, you were young. Did you understand what was going on, what was going to happen?
We understood more or less because we were educated in the politics, young. In 12 years, I was already almost bar mitzvah, so I read the official newspaper practically every day, Magyar Nemzet. It was a neutral, it wasn't anti-Semitic. One of the rest of the newspapers were anti-Semitic, so we really knew Új Nemzet.
Can you describe your bar mitzvah? How was it?
Bar mitzvah was, had the usual preparations, got a pair of tefillin, got the talis. Shabbos there was a luncheon. All the friends of my father and my mother were invited. We had a big dining room in Nyíregyháza. So we set it up also. There was no catering for bar mitzvahs those days. So we set it up and we had the bar mitzvah on Shabbos. And by Sunday, I was back in Cheder.
Can you describe, when the Germans entered your town, can you describe how everyone was, how it was?
Everybody got scared. Everybody was scared. I was davening with my father. There was a Gottesman in town. They had a house near the railroad station. And Mrs. Gottesman was sitting here. Her husband died suddenly. They were very, very rich people. And were davening there in the morning with the oval, the sun, to say Kaddish. And that's Tuesday was the first time we saw a German soldier. They came into Hungary Sunday, they showed Tuesday to Nyíregyháza, and they were marching in the main street. We looked out the window from davening, and we saw them marching into the city. And one of the, Moshe Tzitz was one of the idiots in the town. He also came because of Armenian, and he started screaming, help, help, help. So the sergeant of the detail, German detail, comes over and asks Moshe Tzitz, why are you screaming? He says, why I'm screaming, you're going to hurt me. Did we hurt you? No, I can't wait until you hurt me. Now I scream, before you hurt me. So I marched away. I left him alone. But the German soldiers did not do any harm to anybody in my city. As a matter of fact, we had German soldiers sitting in our house reading. My parents were German educated, so they had German books. And they were complaining they're sick and tired of the war. And there was a officers' billet next house to our house. My father had some special wine he brought from Greece years ago. So he sent over a bottle for the officers every day. The officers wouldn't take it unless they let take money. They want to pay money. They won't take that money. And a German soldier, I remember Pesach, we came home from shul. It was free yet, and not to get to it. And there was a whole bunch of German soldiers on the sidewalk, and one of them bumped my father. He turned around and came about. He apologized For 15 minutes, he didn't mean it. He didn't see my father. When the SS came in down, that's when the trouble started. SS showed up on down, that's when things turned out.
Now,
my brother went to the army. On Pesach, he was drafted. Again, in the Jewish battalion, not in a regular battalion. No, and my brother was there. He was stationed near Budapest, and my two sisters were in contact with him through a sergeant. They wrote him letters. They tried to get him out by getting from Wallenberg a passport, a Swedish passport. Wallenberg gave my sister a Swedish passport for my brother, but his commanding officer wouldn't let him go.
can you describe when things started to turn violent?
Violent in the ghetto yet. There's a little bit violence, but not major violence. Violent in Auschwitz, when they arrived in Auschwitz, that's when the trouble, the virus started. First of all, they killed 90% of the arrivals, just the 10% that could work. When we arrived in Auschwitz, we didn't know where we are. We had no idea. We didn't know where we are, why we're here. We were taken off the train. So right away they jumped on us, men here, women here. We didn't know, no idea, what's the idea. So the Polish workers, they were taking us off the train. They were whispering in our ears, give away your children, give away, get back the Kinder, get back the Kinder, give away the children. Because if a mother held the child's hand, they both went to the gas chamber right away. If older people held the child, the older people went to the gas chamber. Anyway, so nothing lost. But we didn't know, we had no idea what they meant by that. So my father, my Uncle Herschel, my Uncle Mordechai were in line, and then the women were on the other side of the line. Dr. Mengele came about and started selecting. Alive, dead, alive, dead. Anybody who held a child's hand went to the gas chamber right away. So, but we didn't know, we had no idea what's going on. And my father and my uncles were right behind my father. When it came to me, to my turn, Dr. Mengele was called away for a couple of minutes. While he was called away, I just followed the previous guy who went. He went to the living side, so I went to the living side. And my two uncles, by the time the two uncles came there to turn, they were already, Dr. Mengele was already back. Dr. Mengele sent them to the dead side because they each had a child in their hand, my two cousins, Mordechai, Herschel. So I see that my father went to the other side. I ran after him. I said, I wanted to be together with the brothers. So one of the Polish Jews comes over, grabbed me by the lapel, and threw me out to the living side. He shouted, you idiot, you're on the living side. This is no good. Stay here, stay there. We had no idea why they say this. And this was it. This was how my father survived the initial inspection with me, holding my hand, and my two uncles went straight to the gas chamber. We took children.
Now, can you describe life in the ghetto and what ghetto you were in?
The ghetto section of the town of Niederhausen.
Chronological order. Talk about the ghetto first, then about what happened when they were in the ghetto, and then how they got from the ghetto to Auschwitz.
Okay, yeah, I have.
Chronological, I think the order of the questions.
How was he assigned to ghetto?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, not to you, but in general, it should.
No, we are.
Story, yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you feel like you're going too far, just
Yeah.
pull him back and say,
Yeah.
wait, let's go back to the ghetto.
Okay. Okay.
These are important things that he's talking about.
I know,
He's
I know.
through them
I know,
because
exactly.
he's not-
I feel the
he's
same
confused.
thing.
It's confusing.
Yeah,
It doesn't
well, to
make
him
sense.
it's all-
So,
yeah.
be more chronological.
Okay.
When were the Jews gathered in the ghetto? What was life like in the ghetto? How long was he in the ghetto?
Yeah.
Then what happened when they had the transports?
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
did
we
they-
have the question.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. Okay. Can you describe how you got to the ghetto?
Well, they made a curfew for Jews in the whole city. And they came to collect, they had the address of every Jew in the city. They had peasants, wagons, pulled by two horses, stopped at the Jewish at our house, took all the bagage, the suitcases, the pillows, everything that we could we could manage to save and put it on the wagon. And meanwhile, the sergeant in charge of the troop that came to take us sat down in the living room, in the dining room of our house, and started asking my father, where's the diamonds, where's the gold? So my father says, I never bought my wife big golds, real diamonds. I was a charitable person, I gave charity. So, the sergeant says, there's a gendarmerie, not the army. You'll get it from us, said. So finally, I had my daughter, younger daughter, bring up some of this Greek wine. There was a special wine. I put it on the table and he started to drink. Within 15 minutes he was drunk. So when the gendarmerie came into the room, Sergeant, can the Jew take this? He says, if you want to take it. He was shocked. He was already sicker. He was drunk. So he let us do whatever we want to. They took us to the ghetto. They separated a part of the city as the ghetto. And my father had a friend who had a house in the ghetto. He put us up there in his house. So we were there. Everything was okay until they were getting rid of us. No more Jews in this house. So what happened, they gave an order. Every Jew picked Schuers. Schuers, we were the last transport. There were 3 transports going from Mirachausen to Auschwitz. First one, second one, or the last one. But we still had no idea what this is all about. So a week after Schuers was our turn to go. They were packed up in cattle wagons, and each wagon had a big container of water. If you want to drink it, everybody drank from the same can. And it took us 3 days and 3 nights to get to Auschwitz. And that's a separate story, what happened then. It's a long story.
Were you in the ghetto with only your father, or did you have other family?
My mother, my father, my mother, my uncles. Everybody was in the ghetto. My 2 uncles who went to the gas chamber with their boys.
Where did you go after the ghetto?
To Auschwitz.
To Auschwitz. Can you describe the
3 days and 3 nights it took us in the cattle wagons.
Can you describe how the conditions in the cattle cars were?
Women and men together. If you had to do your natural course, there was a hole in the floor of the cattle wagon, and somebody put a towel out around you, and you did what you had to do. You could urinate or whatever. And every morning they put in a fresh can of water for 80 people. There's 80 people in a cattle wagon. And everybody said Tillerman, who was the president of the best lawyer in town, Citron. He was the president of the Board of Education in Mirachausen. He was in our wagon. Very, very distinguished person, educated person, doctorate. And this was on. All of a sudden we arrived in Auschwitz. We didn't know where it was, but we saw one sign. Somebody heard of Auschwitz before. They opened the wagon.
Stop here. We'll go to the next person.
Okay.
So we can start with
Take a drink. Do you want something to eat? Okay. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Okay. Let's just step over.
You're good.
You good?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So let's grab the calculator and find okay, so we're there. We've already heard some of the story, but let's go from there. Okay, so it seems like there's a lot here. It's a selection.
Did we get to it a little bit?
I'm sorry?
Didn't we get to the selection?
Yeah, but we'll just do it again, so it's all kind of following. I think it's better.
Okay, so I start from there?
Yeah, so let's grab.
Not the cattle.
Do you have any follow-up question on the calculator?
How was it like when he went into it?
Yeah, yes, what were you feeling on the calculator? Who has more questions about what he was feeling? I love like factual, so telling the story of facts. Let's get to what were you feeling on the calculator? You know, what were you thinking about? What were you feeling? Did you understand what was happening? I think some of those questions are really good.
Okay.
And then here, yeah, so then, he's going to talk about the selection. See where that goes.
That's here. And where does this come in?
Which one, 31?
30.
You can ask as part of the selection, did you get a number?
And this part. How do I say that?
Yeah, just say, if he says yes, yeah, I'm sure. Okay.
Like here.
Okay, so you talked about the cat.
Yeah.
He talked about that already.
Sure.
28.
Would you want to repeat that, the minute, and tell me
I give 1 and 2 as well.
between the minute and the first day? It's a big thing. It's not just one question, He doesn't have a number on his arm, by the way. He just has a number. If you don't ask to show it to you, because he'll tell you that he doesn't.
So I still ask that?
Yeah.
Okay. And this could be like one question. This is like similar to
Just to remind you.
Of course, you understand that I cannot in 2 hours tell a story that lasted a year and a half.
I
So
know, right?
it's very difficult to choose, as you say.
I'm sure. The more detail, the better. The more.
First, I want to tell the people who Dr. Mengele was.
Yes,
I don't
we'll
know
get to that
that.
right now. We want because
Sarah, you talked about going to Auschwitz, coming into Auschwitz, and
yeah, and then we'll. So they go, yeah.
As we got into Auschwitz,
Oh, wait a second. She'll ask you. She'll ask you. Let's make sure that they're all ready. Okay, we ready?
All right, yeah, we're good.
Okay.
introduce yourself loud and clear.
Hi, my
Hi.
name is Toar Tzadok.
my name is Oscar Heller.
Nice to meet you. I'm going to continue asking you questions about the
Okay.
war. How were you feeling when you were on the way to Auschwitz in the cattle car?
Everybody had some food. The neighbors, the non-Jew neighbors brought us food to the ghetto and gave everybody food. They were nice to us people. Anyway, we can't forget that. A lot of people. And in the ghetto, they also gave food from the state. They issued certain quality of food for each person in the ghetto. And they cooked in the public kitchens, big urns. So everybody had a heavy soup, and they had one thing. And there was for supper something too, bread. There was enough bread in Hungary, they had a lot to eat. So we made do in the ghetto.
When you were on the way to Auschwitz in the cattle car, what were you feeling? What were you thinking?
We had no idea. I couldn't think. We had no idea where we were going. My father was saying, Tillam, we had a Rebbe there, Rebbe Witkerhof was saying, Tillam every day. We only knew when they opened up the rolling doors of the cattle cars, then we saw daylight. And when we arrived in Auschwitz, as they opened the sliding gates, they jumped on us. The SS guards, the Jewish police, everybody jumped on us and with whips. Come on, let's go here. We couldn't even understand what they want from us. Finally, we realized that they want us to stand in line, make 2 lines, one woman and 1 man, and they're going to do further things that they have to do. So we all stood in line, except the old people and their grandmothers, 2 grandmothers in the 80s, they put on a truck and settled them down there until further notice. So what happened was, as we were standing there in 2 groups of men and women, all of a sudden an SS officer arrives with escorts. His name was Dr. Mengele, Joseph Mengele. He was the chief doctor, SS doctor in Auschwitz. And he was making the selections to go to work or to go to gas chamber, work, gas chamber. He stood in line and he just he didn't even bother. He held his, it was easy for him. And I told you what happened when my turn came, my father's turn came. Somebody went to the living side before. Meanwhile, Dr. Mengele was called away for a second, and my father just followed the other guy on the living side. So I and my father went to the living side. The two brothers, Herschel and Mordechai, one lucky, he was back already. So he saw the boys holding in the hand of my uncles, right away to the gas chamber. So my father saw that my uncles are going to the other way. He ran after them, because he wanted the brothers to be together. So one of the Polish workers grabbed my father. He says, "You short an idiot. Go back to where you are. You want to live, go back there. You go there. Leave him alone. Don't try to go back to the gas chamber side." My father didn't know what he's talking about. Anyway, so what happened, we went to the showers. We were marching to the showers for half a mile. And my mother went, of course, right away to the gas chamber, because my little sister. But my little sister could have gone with my grandmother if they knew what it's all about. But nobody knew, so my mother held my sister's hand, so they both went to the gas chamber. My mother was dead 2 hours after we arrived, but they took these right away to the gas chamber. Anyway, so then we went to the baths, to the showers, and gave us a haircut, body hair, and they assigned us to the barrack. I was assigned to a barrack with my father together. Most of the people in that barrack were landsmen of mine. They were usually nearest house of transport, all from my city. So he settled in the barrack, where they settled us, and all of a sudden the barrack commander and an SS guard comes in and goes to my spot, and they talk to each other, they discuss each other. I always says, "What is this kid doing here?" So they didn't know what to do with me, because there was no children there in the barrack. So they told me they took me away from my father, they told me to follow them. So there was one barrack in the camp number ED that had, had boys from 12 to 16. Dr. Mengele was conducting some experiments with
Experiments.
With
Twins.
germs, infection control. So they threw me into that barrack without doing anything, and I was in that barrack, and familiar with the other boys, and so my father ran away from his barrack. He found out where I was and said hello to me before running away to his barrack. And he got a whole bread to one of the Polish Jews there. They went over to my father and says, "You idiot, why did you bring your little boy here? Why didn't you hide him?" So since he insulted my father, he brought him a whole bread, gave him the bread. And he came with the bread and he wanted to give me the bread. So I told my father, "You stay here, you need the bread." We didn't get the rations 3 days. When we arrived in Auschwitz, it took the third day to get the rations. For 3 days we didn't have anything except black coffee. So my father was pushing the bed to my side. I was pushing the bed to his side. And all he said, he says, put in my ear, he says, "I'm Sheila, you have to leave."
So you have the nickname Red Fox. How did you get that nickname?
What you have? You can ask me why.
You have the nickname Red Fox. How did you get that nickname?
Well, I come later. It comes in Dachau. So anyway, so there are two problems if you were in Auschwitz. One problem was to stay there, keep alive. And the other problem was getting out of it, getting out of Auschwitz. So I couldn't get out of Auschwitz because I was in the boys' barrack. And what happened was, we decided finally in September they don't need the boys. So there was a curfew in the barrack. The trucks came, they took away all the boys to the gas chamber next door. I was hiding on there was a shelf on top of the barrack, And I didn't know what to do, so I was hiding in the shelf. They didn't see me. They left me alone in the barrack. And I finally went back to the street and tried to find a barrack that would let me in. So finally, after crying and screaming, one of the barrack commanders opened the gate and put me in the barrack. But still, I was nothing. I had no identity in Auschwitz because I was never organized. So what happened was they had another action, an Erev Yom Kippur. I had to get away from the selection again. This was selection that Dr. Mengele selected. So finally, I got away by hiding in an oven. The center of the barracks had a big brick oven. So I know other boys didn't even make an effort to escape. So everything was empty. I got out. Yom Kippur night was raining like it's raining here today. I was outside. I had nowhere to go. I was knocking at the barrack doors. Let me in, let me in. Nobody opened the barrack doors. Finally, I knocked so long in one of the barracks that the commander came out, took me by the lapel, and threw me to one of the beds. I had a place to be for that night. You want to go on here? You want to ask some questions?
Why wouldn't they let you into the barracks? Why? Why didn't they let you in?
Because he had a heart. I don't know. He was a barrack commander. The barrack commanders were all prisoners.
Right.
But
Why
most of
would
it,
the other ones not let you in? It was dangerous for them.
oh, sure.
They could get shot if they let in a random child who didn't have a number that he belonged in.
No numbers. I never got numbers because I got out. When I got out from Auschwitz, I also got without numbers. I finally got a number in Dachau.
He just fell through the cracks in Auschwitz, so yeah.
So what happened now, I got to get out of Auschwitz because eventually they catch me with no papers. So there was a transport. I heard there was a transport going to Dachau. And one of the barracks was the interview barrack, selection. They didn't want to let sick people, old people in a transport to Dachau. They finished them here. So I got into that barrack where there was a selection. The selection that day wasn't made by Dr. Mengele. It was made by Professor Epstein, who was Dr. Mengele's one of his teachers in medical school in Prague. So he recognized him right away when he arrived in Auschwitz, and he made him the head prisoner doctor of Auschwitz. So Dr. Epstein was making the selection, a Jew making a selection, of sending other Jews to death. So it came to my turn. I was a little boy. So he looks at me, and he's sorry for me, he says. Was kann ich machen? So I told him, Herr Lagerarzt, bitte lassen Sie mich arbeiten gehen. Please, let me go to work. He says, finally, he gives me a job. He says, go ahead, go to the living side. So I got through the selection in the barrack. What happened after that, you were given a whole bread, you were given the winter jackets, you were given some clothes, and you were lined up the two kitchens of the barracks in Auschwitz for two long kitchens, and the barracks here. And at the side of the kitchens were parade grounds, meeting grounds. So they gave us whatever they wanted to give us, and they lined us up behind the kitchen. The gate of the camp number D was here, and the trains were here. We had to get out of the gate of the D, go back to the camp, and go to the railroad cars. What happened was, all of a sudden, as we were all lined up, Dr. Mengele shows up with his assistant. The assistant had a big Red Cross band. And he looks around. He sees me in the line. He says, "Was machst du da hier?" I escaped already a couple of times before. "Was machst du da hier, Rotfuchs?" That's when he gave me the name Roto Red Fox. You're a fox, you're running from one place to another place. So I told the sergeant, "Nehmen Sie acht, take care of this boy, hold the pistol on his head, don't let him get away this time." The sergeant takes out his pistol, puts it on my head. He says, "You move, I shoot." I stood there with my clothes on, everything there. All of a sudden they're screaming from the line waiting to go to the railroad. They wanted to pull out some more people, Dr. Mengele, some old people, some young people. They didn't want to go. They didn't want to leave the lines. So they were screaming, crying, screaming. The sergeant got scared. He ran towards the lines to see what's going on. While he was running towards the lines, here's the kitchen. We were here. I ran around the kitchen, and I got into the entrance of the camp. They were marching out already to the railroad, and I went into a line. I got into the train. Without any papers, without any bread, without anything, I have to give up everything. I got into the train. The train that took me to Dachau, 3 days and 3 nights, and that was my salvation. That was my last meeting with Dr. Mengele.
How did you feel once you got to Dachau? How did you feel once you went to Dachau?
Well, that's a separate story now. Dachau, we arrived, we were assigned to camp number 4, Lager 4. I had no idea why, when. We were marching, we got off the thing, there was a railroad siding there also where the train stopped. And we went marched to the gate of the camp, and they were counting us. And we were assigned to barracks, small barracks. And I passed, there was an SS officer standing there, just looking at what's going on, with his hands in the back. All of a sudden he sees me. He says, "Come on here, Junge." Like, "Come here, young fellow." I forget myself, he calls me Junge, it's no good already. He says, "Wie viel Jahr hast du?" How old I am. So I added 1 year. He says, 14, Sturmführer. He was a Sturmführer, so right away. He says, "Wie viel Jahr hast du?" Again I said, 14, Herr Sturmführer. "Come to mir, I should go with him." I figured myself, this is it, man, they're going to kill me here. I had to go. So he takes me to a big building, opens the door, closes the door, and he says, "Hol me die Jacke." I should take off my jacket. I started shaking, I didn't know what to do. So he comes over to me, the SS officer, says, "I'm a holy Junge. Relax, young fellow, take it easy." So he went into the door, the back door, comes out 5 minutes later with my jacket full of wurst, bread, margarine, cheese, all the food out here. Says, "Geh mal in dein Barack." I should go to my assigned barrack. And when the hunger has come to me, whenever your starvation come to me, he said, he was the head of the food magazines of camp number 4, both for prisoners and for guards. So every evening when we came up from work, I got my soup, my pot of soup, ate it up. I went to the kitchen. He was there, inspecting what's going on, giving out food. And all of a sudden he sees me, he says, "Komm mal hier, Junge, hast du Hunger?" "Am I hungry?" He says, "Jawohl, Herr Sturmführer. Hol mal eine Schüssel." I should bring a pot, the assigned pot. My pot was in my back and door. So he filled it up. He said, "Geh mal zurück in dein Barack." I should go back to my bag. It's been on okay for quite a while, about 2 months. After that, I was assigned to another commando. I was working. We were building underground, under mountains, space for bomb-proof factories. So we had to carry cement, 50 kilogram sacks of cement for the project. And I was assigned to a certain detail. I couldn't lift up a 50 kilogram cement bag. So the capo, the overseer, who was also Jewish, told me, "Sit down, Wojciech, and you don't have to carry the cement, just sit down and rest." All of a sudden, one of the guards comes in one day and sees me sitting. So he tells the capo, "Warum sitzt er? Why is he sitting?" He says, "He's a young boy, he cannot carry a 50 kilogram cement bag." He says, "You telling me he's a young boy?" So he takes his whip, he starts beating the capo. He says, "You tell me you can't do it." So he beats him. They told me to lift up the cement sack. So I tried to lift it up and I collapsed under it. And the cement fell down, split, put in my eyes. I was blind. All of a sudden I was blind. You want to?
Yeah, we'll switch. Yeah, let's wait for one. Well, I'm sorry. Finish your story. I don't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
You want me? I can stop here.
Okay. Yeah, because we have 2 more students. I want to make sure we get the turn. Okay, so let's. So keep those questions for next.
Yeah.
This is where Dachau comes in, how I saved the lives of the people.
Okay. I think we have one or two more follow-up questions on the story you just told, and then we'll move on from there.
Okay.
Dad, take a little water.
You can
Take
keep
a
your
little water.
arm on top of it. Like, stuck this.
What? How about a piece of melon? You want a little piece of melon? No.
I'm not accurate 100%, this was a long time ago, and things get
Mixed.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
I did a 3-hour video for Spielberg.
I'm sorry.
Spielberg sent
the
the whole
Spielberg
crew.
video? Oh, yeah?
The whole crew. A 3-hour video. It's
Oh,
in the
wow.
museum, it's in the Holocaust.
Oh yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, I heard those were long interviews. Those were.
We all said we are tired already. We had to stop. We can't go anymore.
Yeah, we won't tire out that much. Yeah.
Okay, let me try that.
Okay, let's start with this follow-up question so you understand that better. Everyone's getting your food. What they felt, what they saw, what they.
What happened? What was the question?
We ask a lot of things. It gets fun to discuss. Okay, ready?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Rebecca Pimentel. I'm going to continue asking you questions. Why did the SS officer do that for you? Why did he help you?
I have no idea. He did more than that for me later on. And I was looking for all the guards after the liberation. I found all my guards, all the SS people in my camp. I never found him. He disappeared. I couldn't, I was looking, I was asking. His name was Sturmführer Proschel. I have no idea what happened to him. Like all the SS, they disappeared 3 days before the Americans came in. But 3 days. But nobody was guarding us. But we didn't want to go out of the wire. The wires were still there. We didn't know what to do. But 3 days later, we got the scouts. But I never know what happened to Sturmführer Proschel. He might have been a Jew. I have no idea. There were some people just hiding. They thought they tried to help somebody. I have no idea.
Okay. He was putting his life on the line. He risked his life. He could have gotten in trouble. Yeah, you think he could have gotten in trouble if he was caught?
They hung him all in Dachau. He wouldn't have been getting a medal. I went to Dachau with my wife about 15 years ago, and I showed her the tombstones of the guards. Executed this date, executed this date. The trials were in Landsberg, near Munich. And I saw the whole thing, the whole proceedings.
Maybe could he finish the story about the sand, the cement? We don't want to do that.
No,
You know
yeah.
That story.
You want to continue the story about the sand?
The cement that went in
This-
your eyes. You want to.
Oh, okay, so they took me back to my barrack, and I knew already that straightforward thing to do when somebody got disabled, they took him out to the forest and put a bullet to the head. So that's right away, when I came, they brought me into the barrack, I said to my barrack commander, go to the gate of the camp and ask for Sturmführer Proschel and tell him that his friend, the boy, is in trouble to come to the barrack. The barrack commander went to the gate of the camp, told the guard to call out Sturmführer Proschel. The Sturmführer came out, and I told him what happened. So he came to the barrack, and he asked me, yeah, was geschieht you? What happened? So I told him he forced me to carry a 50 kilogram cement, and I collapsed, and the sack opened with my eyes. So he said, okay, I should wait for a minute. He went out, he came back with the camp commander. He brought the commandant of the camp to see me. He didn't want me to end up like other people. So the commander of the camp comes in, sees a young little boy, never had any business with him. Was geschieht you? So I told him the same story. So they called in one of the doctors, the prisoner doctors, Dr. Elliketch from Klosenburg, and he said that he needs a certain medication to clean up his eyes so he shouldn't get blind. So the commandant of the camp, instead of sending me with a bullet, he went to Landsberg, the city, took out the prescription, he gave me the prescription. Within 1 week I was cleaned it up. That was the... so then the Schulführerposter says, Junge, du wirst mehr nicht rausgehen. You're not going to go out of the camp to work. You're going to work in the camp. You're going to work in the kitchen. So I was assigned to work in the kitchen. That's how my whole saga started, where I kept scores of people alive. Just, here the last one died now, about 3 months ago. He called me up and he said, before I die, the doctor's telling me I have about 2 weeks to go. I want to thank you for giving me an extra 72 years of my life. Because I died at 90, I'm dying at 90, and I was 18 and you saved my life. They live in Sydney. He ended up in Australia. It took me 60 years or 50 years to find him, but I found him.
Can you tell us more about the people you saved? Can you tell us more about the people you saved?
There was a father and son, was Greenwald. Arugas Aboysam Seniko. The Arugas Aboysam was a famous safer in Hungary. He was roofing in Clivedown. And another, the three father and sons. The other father and son was my mind doesn't work. I can have it back in 10 minutes. Anyway, so I had 3 sets of father and sons, which I kept alive. And then I kept alive people, whoever I run to. And whoever came to the kitchen day, my job in the kitchen was to stand at the gate of the kitchen, which was a big kitchen. It was feeding 8,000 people or 7,000 people. So I was standing in the kitchen, no gate. Whenever an SS guy came around, I screamed, Achtung. So everybody had to take off their caps, stop where they're working. And until he said, weitermachen, carry on. Then everybody went back to the road and I left once. So they never saw that what I did was when people asked me for soup, I asked them for their pot, the issue pot, they got the soup in. I took the pot, I went into the kitchen, I dipped it into the big stainless steel vats, cooking. And fill it up and take it outside and give them a pot of soup. Once I didn't realize that the door came in and another SS officer, not Proshel. And as he comes in, I had the pot in the big urn and I was pulling up the soup. And I see an SS officer coming in. I didn't know what to do. I was in a little stool because the stainless steel pots were hard. So I hold the soup, he comes in, everybody, I screamed Achtung, and everybody stopped doing where they were. And I'm holding the soup here, I'm on a stool, and the SS officer is at the gate, and all of a sudden the SS officer goes to his pistol, and moves the pistol from his holster. You know, they didn't have no excuse, they didn't have to have any excuse why they shoot somebody. I committed a tremendous sin, what I did. I took a dirty pot from somebody's barrack, gave it to the kitchen help, they dipped it into the clean soup that was cooking, and he made the whole soup infectious. Cleanliness was very tough by them. So I figured he's going to shoot me, and everybody was quiet. And finally, he changed his mind, puts the pistol back to his holster, goes over to Kitchi, my name was Kitchi, he was almost all on, grabs the plate, the chisel from my hand, pulls back the soup into the vat, takes the chisel and knocks it to the floor, and he says, weitermachen, he left the bar. Everybody came out to the kitchen and he thought you're finished. This was just before I Yeah, this is the kitchen area. I was working in the kitchen.
Was there a time during the war that your emunah changed?
Emunah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Liberation.
I don't want to touch on this.
Okay.
What about the Morses? The Morse family from Australia, the father and son.
One day, a middle-aged man comes over to me in front of the kitchen and says, "Kichi, I'm from Munkach. My son is dying in the barrack. You must help me, you must give him food every day. He just got out of typhus fever. He hasn't eaten in 2 weeks, high temperature. You must give me every day food for him. The food that he gets is not enough." So I said, "What do you want from my life? I'm getting into trouble. I'm giving out soup after another soup. They're going to kill me." He says, he gives me by my lapel. He pulls me to his barrack, to his son's barrack. His son was laying on the straw. There was nothing left on his body except bones and skin. You have never seen a skeleton. It was a skeleton. He couldn't open his eyes. So Tarvin Boone tells me, "Kichi, you must save him. He's my son." Okay, I say, "Okay, come to the kitchen every day. I put it together a package. I give you a package for the whole day and feed him." He put together a package every day. He was there, and he recovered partially. He was functional. Meanwhile, the Americans came in 2 months later, and everybody was assigned different camps. I was ambulatory, so I was assigned to the people that walk. Farmers were not ambulatory. He still had to have support to walk. Was assigned to another barrack. So we were separated. I was looking for him for many years. For 2 years after the war, I was in yeshiva in Košice, Czechoslovakia, Kosovo, and I was walking Friday afternoon to the cleaning store to give my laundry. And on the other side of the street, a narrow street, cobblestone street, and a middle-aged man with a handsome, tall, young man walking on the other side of the street, and they stop and they look at me. So they walk over to the other side, they come to my side, and the middle-aged man says, "Tell me, were you in camp number 4 in Dachau?" I says, "Yes." So he falls on me, he says, "You were the boy, you saved my son." "No, this is my son." Beautiful, tall man. "This is my son." So he took me to the house. He lost his family, just this one boy that he left. And he took me to his house to give me, I was going back to Hungary in a couple of days to my sister's wedding. So he gave me some merchandise that they don't have in Hungary, needles and yarn. So I had a whole package of yarn. I came back to Košice after that. I got my visa in Prague to America. And then I started looking for him again. I want to know where. I heard he went to Australia. So I tried to find out some people from Australia who I knew. You know, Farben Bloom from Munkach? Nobody knew him. There was a bar mitzvah in Englewood. My younger daughter was put up some guests over Shabbos. He has a big house. And one of the guests was from Sydney, Australia. So I said, "Sydney, Australia," I got to ask him. I said, "Sydney, Australia, you're from Sydney. You know maybe somebody by the name of Farbenthal. No. Farbenblum. But Johnson. So one says, "Of course I know him, but you never find him under Farbenblum. His name is Sam Morse. He changed his name when he came to America. He became very rich. Farbenblum was no good. The problem wasn't Farbenblum. The problem was he came on a passport that had a Jewish name.
Moskowitz.
So after a while he became very big. Moskowitz would say Morse, Moskowitz, two first three letters. So I told him, if you see him, tell him that I'm looking for him. Oscar Heller is looking for him. I got a call from New York 2 days later.
From Australia.
From Australia. Oscar Heller, I finally have you. Okay, I'm coming to New York. So I came to New York right away. We had a reunion in his hotel. And we had dinner together. Every year he used to come. We used to go out and have dinner, go to visits, until he became sick. He had bladder cancer. And he gave a lot of tzedakah. He's a very wealthy man. He made it work. He's got one son who's not religious, and one son who's a Lubavitcher, the long beard. So we got together. So 2 weeks before that, or 3 weeks before that, he calls me up. He said, Oscar, you know, my doctors tell me I have about 2-3 weeks. I want to thank, before I go, I want to thank you for adding 72 years to my life. I'm dying at 90. I was supposed to die at 18. Thank you very much. He said, don't cry. I don't cry. I got my what I deserve. I got my 90 years. That's enough. So that was Sam Moss. I always break down when the father tells me, this is my son.
You want to just talk about liberation before we get to the last person?
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned you reunited with your sister. How do you know she survived?
I didn't. I came home from Germany, and I came to her house. And I found my two sisters not in the house, but the neighbor told me that they would go away in the daytime somewhere, to Paskas. Paskas had a big business with my future brother-in-law in Niederschausen after the war. They were the first Jews coming back alive from Germany and from the army. And they told me where to go to find Paskas. You know Paskas candy here? They sell them in stores, grocery stores. Mm-hmm. That was Paskas. He was the head of the community in Niederschausen. So they told me that I can find my sisters in Honig, Dame Honig house. She does some business there with alcohol, wine. So I had the carriage take me to there. I found my two sisters. And I didn't find my dad. I had to go home. They told me that again. So I went back again to my house, and I knocked at the door, and there was my two sisters. And they said, they didn't know I survived. I didn't know they survived.
What were your first steps to rebuilding your life?
My first step to rebuilding my life was going to school every day, to David Minion every day. I said Kaddish after my father, because my father died in Mauthausen, and he was still within the year after liberation, so I said Kaddish after my father. And in 1946, I packed myself up, I took the train, I went to Somerset, Puparuf Yeshiva, Hungarian Yeshiva, and I was there until I left for Yeshiva, and I went to Budapest. In Budapest, I was put into a Micha, Mizrahi Micha, modern Orthodox. Micha is a children's home. There was someone from Niederschausen there, an officer, so he put me in the home. I had some education, and I was there with Kippur, but it wasn't my future. Meanwhile, I was supposed to get a passport. I had an uncle and aunt in America to get a passport and go to America. I went back to Niederschausen, I got all the papers ready. And after a lot of problems, they gave me a passport because I told the police prefecture in Budapest, if you don't give me the passport today, I'm sleeping here in your office. So they were turning around, what should I do with this kid? Give him the passport. So I had a passport, but I still couldn't get out of Hungary. I couldn't get a visa from the American consul. He wouldn't give me a visa. He had an excuse. Every day he had another excuse. I was asking for a student visa, 6-month visa, to come to Torah Vodaas, Shiva Torah Vodaas. So anyway, so finally I made up my mind I'm going to Prague. Prague had an easy consul. He gave everybody a visa who came. So I smuggled myself through the frontier to Prague. I went over to the consulate, and Rabbi Forehand helped me out. He was a Gouda in Prague. I got the visa in 10 minutes. I got the visa. The United Jewish Affairs gave me a ship ticket. They kept me with money on my stay in Prague. I had a kitchen. They had a kitchen, kosher kitchen. I ate in a kosher kitchen every day until I came to America. And that was my intervening between America and Torah. I went to high school. I did high school in 2 years. I went to evening and day high school together. And then I went to college, and there I am.
Well, let's stop here. I want to make sure that he gets a chance to. Thank you so much. Just a few more minutes. I know it's a long
session.
Long session. I know. So one.
What's the next one?
Yeah. Are you give your mic? Just a few last questions.
Okay, no problem.
Where do you want her to start on the
I think that we talked about liberation, but we didn't ask about the day of liberation. We kind of asked we skipped the actual liberation.
Right.
Okay,
So, we just go back to that.
Ask a little about that, and then talk just kind of the big picture.
Final words.
We need to get these questions.
Okay, great.
Asked about the Day of Liberation.
We only have 10 more
Okay,
minutes of film time, so we got.
So,
who else?
I just crossed out a few of those. We consulted.
These, okay,
yeah.
these we have to have in, because these are the generics. At the
Some
end,
of them are a
at the
little,
end.
okay.
Okay.
The ones that you feel comfortable with.
Okay.
Yeah, the most important is what is your message to our generation?
Okay, so that one I have, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
have
great.
that one, and then you can
Hi,
do
Mr. Haller.
also, I don't know, that's probably the most important one.
And
photos, did you bring any photos?
We don't.
Do you bring any photos?
We crossed out the ones that don't
Yeah,
apply
okay.
already. We went through them.
I'll get started. So she has the map.
I don't know what to do with this.
Flip it up.
Oh, okay. I could have done
No. You can keep your arm over this one. All right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Heller. I'm Evie Pollack. We discussed liberation a little bit, but we didn't discuss the actual day of liberation. We kind of discussed what you did afterwards. So if you don't mind going back to the actual day that you were liberated.
We left Niederhausen Sunday morning. They tried to do it Sunday when everybody's home. They didn't want the population to see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Then we marched to the railroad station. We arrived in Auschwitz Tuesday afternoon.
The day that you were liberated from your camp, when the army came in and you were finally able to, like you said, to see your sisters and go back to your hometown. Can you describe that day?
When I was liberated, what happened was there was Pesach, they heard artillery noise, but it was very muffled. Every day after Pesach, the artillery was louder and louder. The day of liberation, overnight they had a whole big artillery equipment behind the camp, and the camp was this entrance. So the last night, there was already no more guards. The guards ran away. The last night, the fight, the two artillery had a fight. A lot of the shells fell in camp. Some people got hurt, but we survived. And in the morning, there was a scout plane circling the camp, army plane, American army plane. And within a couple of hours, we heard tanks rumbling. So tanks were on the road, coming with their infantry, with their guns out, and they finally got to the camp and cut the wires, and everybody was jumping. I didn't do anything. I kept quiet. I took my bag. I walked into Munich. Munich was the closest city to Dachau. I didn't want to stay one more hours in camp. I went right away to Dachau, and as I entered Dachau, there was an army base there, the headquarters company of the 24th Infantry Division. Right away I went in there. I still had my prisoner clothes on. So there was a Hungarian in that company, headquarters company. So I told them, since you stay with us, you're going to eat with us. So I stayed with them for a while. And then I went to, there was a school open for Czech citizens. Hungarians didn't have any chance. Hungary was a defeated country. They couldn't help their citizens. I told them I'm a Czech. a check. I didn't lie. And that's how I went to a check. School, they were put us in school. One day they took us to Pilsen in trucks, British Army trucks, then from Pilsen to Prague, from Prague to Bratislava, Czechoslovakia, from Bratislava to Budapest, and from Budapest to Nyíregyháza. That's how I came back.
Wow. And then you talked about how you met up with your sisters.
Yeah.
So
I rang the bell. My sister opened the gate.
Mm-hmm. So okay, sorry. So at what point did you get married and start your family? If you can talk about that a little bit.
When I got married?
Yeah.
In 57. I came in 47 to America. Mm-hmm. I got married in 57.
Can you talk about your wife a little bit?
What happened was, as I was going to school in Yeshiva, summer I got a job in Wadman's Hotel, not in your days, 100 years ago,
Right.
Sharon Springs, New York. And he had about 7 kids with them. Rabbi Walken was a very well-known rabbi in Crown Heights, a big white beard. He was there with his family as a guest, so I was serving them. And he had a daughter, Esther. Esther helped me out all the time. She helped me set the tables. And I told her, Esther, you're 15 years old, I'm 19 years old, and you're going to be 18 years old, I'm going to give you a call from New York. So it happened when I finished college. I told her I'd give her a call. I gave her a call, and I said, would you like to have a date with me? This was 4 years later. She said, yes, okay. So we had a date. At the end of the date, she says, you know, you have a problem. My father is looking for a rabbi. You're an engineer. This wouldn't be. But I have a classmate in
oh, wow.
Central High School.
Central High School. I have a friend there who will be good for you. She says, okay, if your father doesn't want me, then I can't force it. Okay, I'll take your friend. I'll take your friend. So I took a friend, and in 4 weeks or 5 weeks, we're engaged.
Wow. So your wife had been in America, your wife and her family, the entire war.
My brother, my father-in-law, mother-in-law came to America from Vienna.
Wow, okay. And then just some overview questions after liberation, just for us and our generation. Do you have any message that you would like to deliver to me and my generation?
Don't give up.
Don't give up. All right.
I was once at the gate of the gas chamber. I made that.
When did you begin to tell your story and why?
I was busy. I didn't deal with that too much. And then when I finished school and I got my college degree, then I started thinking, well, maybe I should.
What was your degree? What did you get? What kind of degree did you get? Wow.
I did graduate school in Master's, Columbia.
Wow. That's very impressive. So when did you begin to tell your story?
I don't remember.
Don't remember?
The Shoah Foundation, you know, when Steven Spielberg started taping, you got in touch with.
He woke me up.
Oh wow, you were in one of his films?
I was busy, you know. I was busy with my life.
Mm-hmm.
Would you talk about it to your children or no?
Yeah. Whenever I got one of my children getting married, I always said to allow to the next guy, Dr. Mengele, you didn't prevail. My son is a plastic surgeon.
Would you tell your children the whole story? Or
yeah, they have the
We have the tape.
Tape.
We have the tape. That was the first time we heard the story. We've never heard
Really?
a lot of the things that were in that tape.
How many years ago was that?
Good question. Look it up.
It's not easy to remember. Some things I don't remember right, the correct dates.
He was just ready at that point. So now he's the whole.
But the interesting thing is, I asked, Sam Morse asked me one time at the lunch, to ask her, I gotta do something for you. What can I do for you? I said, Sam, I didn't look for you for getting anything. I don't even want you to give charity on my name. I can give my own charity. So he said, so what can I do for you? He says, when I come up after 120 years, they're going to ask me, ask her, did you do any good in your life? I give him your business card.
Okay, well, I think that that's it, right?
Do you have more questions?
Do you have anything you would like to add, or?
To add this most with his business card.
Yeah.
Great story.
But he did give, to all justice to him, he gave a big check to my daughter, Heidi, who is the chairperson of the hospital of Tel Aviv. He gave her a 5-figure check. Without my knowledge, I didn't interfere in doing that.
Do you want to answer about Holocaust denial?
So, how do you think that we can combat Holocaust denial after your experiences?
There ain't that many denials. They can't. Everything is there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's ridiculous. They're crazy. Besides the anti-Semites, they're crazy. Because the facts are all there. It's not something that the facts are destroyed.
Definitely you sitting here telling us your story is hopefully helping us too.
Slowly, less and less.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
It
giving
was
me
a
a
pleasure.
chance
Thanks so
to.
much.
I hope you learned something from my experience.
Yes, it was an amazing story. Thank you.
Amazing story. It's amazing.
This is a very small part of my story.
Okay, all of you, if you want to come around so you can give, just leave it, Mr. Heller the gift, all of you together. Where should I thank him? You just put it, I stand up and put it on the left here. Okay, so I'll leave on the mic. So, Mr. Heller, just continue being seated. The girls would like to give you a token of their appreciation.
Thank you so much.
And what we
I didn't even take it from Sam Morse. No gift.
Give us your business card.
If you have a business card, give me your business card.
What we have here, the gift is the book that Rabbi Lau wrote about his experiences in Buchenwald. And we have the thank you note.
I was at dinner with him together.
The thank you note from the head of the school, Mrs. Nerishal. And Baylor, this is for you as well. This is when there'll be the screening, the program, the dinner and the screening. So obviously the whole family is invited in April. And here's a folder of many of the news articles that have appeared about the project throughout the years.
Thank you.
So, and we want to do a group picture in a second. Can you just stay seated? Okay, we'll do this one. We want you in the group picture too. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so ladies come behind. And we'll wait for Rabbi Shulitz also.
You know when,
I have my phone also. Someplace. My Claire's.
well, how soon after Pesach is that date?
It's before, it's after
It's after Pesach,
Pesach,
like,
but
I
after
think
Yom
it's soon
HaShoah.
after.
Oh, after Yom HaShoah.
Yeah, after Yom HaShoah, so it's like a few days later. I'll tell you, Yom HaShoah is like April 21st,
Right.
April 27th.
Okay, that's fine.
We don't do Yom HaShoah ever because the survivors don't
Yeah,
come.
yeah, oh,
So we don't do it. It just brings the different programs that they're involved.
Right? Yeah, right?
First year we did it in Central Florida, we did it Yom HaShoah, after the survivors show. I won't survive, the school ones and I will.
All right, let's do a group picture.
Ready?
Okay, wait, we'll get everybody in, hold on. Okay, everybody's squished together, you're in also.
Squish together.
Yeah, squished together.
That's a professional photography term. I use it all the time.
Who's going first?
Okay, who do we look
Miss
at?
Karen?
Marcy.
Who are we looking
at?
Okay,
Miss Karen.
Marcy.
Okay,
We'll look at Marcy
all right.
first.
Great. Thank
All
you.
right, now wait, now with my phone.
No, with my
Wait,
camera, it's
I'll
better.
find Michaela. Oh, Marcy is my phone.
All right.
Michaela's camera,
Everybody
please.
ready?
Yeah, we're looking at Marcy again.
No, do
Okay,
Kayla.
Kayla.
Go ahead.
Michaela
Do
first.
me.
Michaela.
We're looking
Yeah.
at Michaela.
All right, one more time. Great.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. There we go. Nice. Pretty smiles.
Terrific. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay. I think you're a Central graduate, aren't you?
My mother is.
Your mother. Oh,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so we got that. We got.
Yeah, that's how we know.
So where'd you go to high school? Not Central. I got it.
Well, I went to an all-girls school too.
Oh. Where'd you go?
Thank you so much.
You never heard of
We want to ask a question. It's only once we had a survivor who came in and said to me, she went to Central. I said, oh, wonderful. What year did you graduate? And I don't want to talk about this. She never got a diploma. She was livid with anger. All she did was sit and did half the interview and talk about how.
No, I'm not livid. I just said it's a
But at the end,
high school in Borough
at the
Park.
end, believe it, don't laugh. At the end, they presented her with
Yeah,
the diploma at the event.
Do you want some fruit?
No, no,
You
thank
know,
you.
you might know
Does he have water?
Barbara.
Yeah, we.
She has a barber?
No, but there's
I had some water,
another
it's okay.
lover.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's amazing. It's an amazing story, and I know they learned. I know I learned a lot from it. So I can only imagine. How
I
much,
couldn't even remember all the things.
I can't believe how much you remember. It's amazing. It's.
The escapes were such amazing stories. Doesn't seem real, but it's amazing.
Here I am.
How about the article?
Oh, yes.
We brought like 40 people to the event. Got her diploma.
When he had the reunion, when he met Sam Moss, when he came to New York, there was a videotape by Hamodia, and it was like a whole thing. And there was a whole, then there was an article written by his son. This wasn't the reunion actually, but this was an article written by Sam Moss's son. These are my parents, by the way. I mean, my mom, you know, from years back. So if you just want to take a copy of it, it's just an interesting article to read. I hope it's clear. Soon after they had their meeting, Sam Moss's son married off a child and made a Shebebrachas, and then my parents were invited, and then he wrote the article after that. So I don't know. Yeah, sure. Take as many as you need. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, just so you have some reading material after this. Yeah.
No, it's good.
Yeah. Sort of. He was very this whole Sam Moss story, it was like a total miracle how they found each other. It was for 60 years we've been asking everyone we knew, do you know a guy named
And they just didn't have the name.
Shmuel Farbenblum? They were like,
Right.
no. And then my sister just hosted this couple from Sydney, and she said, you know, my father's been looking for this guy, you know, Shmuel Farbenblum, and he said, it's my next door neighbor. The only thing is his name is not Farbenblum anymore, it's Moss, and the rest is history, so, you know, go figure. So, anyway, but that's just,
So nice they got to connect in the end.
yeah, that's what he was left with after the whole story that you just heard.
Right, but
He had
he
something
had
good.
that- yeah.
Something good came out of it.
The
So,
other thing is, my father was in Mauthausen.
let me just,
He was in hospital, camp hospital, for a couple of more months. His health was a landsman from my town, from Hungary.
Mm-hmm.
He lived in New Rochelle.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So his wife is still there. His widow is still. He was also in camp, and he was my father's caretaker.
So he knew. So he saw him in Mauthausen.
Yeah.
So, oh, wow.
He knew him. He was there when he died. He had a Shabbos Rosh
Oh wow. Oh wow.
the day before Hanukkah.
Wow.
He didn't have to die. He could have. If he wanted to eat today, he didn't want to eat today.
You didn't want to eat treifus? That's what happened? Wow.
There were 30 people from Yiddishkeit were there. They all gave him part of their rations without any meat or any.
He didn't want to eat it. Oh.
Okay, and I got a state certificate for milk. And I needed one later on, a couple of years later. I wrote a letter to the mayor of Milk, mayor, to send me a copy of the death certificate. They couldn't find it. I got it the first time I got it. I found it to the milk, to the city of milk. Couldn't find it. But they had it anyway in my files in Vienna. So I had to I'm a recipient of a pension, 2 pensions from Germany.
2
2 pensions.
pensions? Oh, really?
On the Social Security.
Right.
They didn't deduct when I worked. And the other one was Wiedergutmachung, it was reparations.
Reparations. Wow. It's
Okay, thank you very
Thank you
much.
so
Have a
much.
nice-
Thank
Girls
you.
are terrific, really. Excellent, all of you. Well prepared and really doing a good thing.
Is it raining outside?
Find out. Okay, all right.
Find out soon.
You up there.
Yeah, we'll take.
Thank
they'll,
you.
they'll walk you out. Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Come this way, Dad.